But the main target group is, of course, the national agencies, but it also gives the universities the idea of where to focus their work and when they're moving forward. I don't know how much time I have. Can I speak a bit more, or am I?
You can speak a bit.
No. Maybe I can call it a day now and then come back to you later.
Okay. Thank you so much. And speaking now about the national agencies perspective, this new program brought many challenges for the national agencies. They had to include national inclusive action plans. They have to include the role of the inclusion officer. How is the National Agency of Romania approaching inclusion and diversity? How has been everything going?
Thank you, and first of all, let me just dedicate a few seconds to saying hello to the Erasmus generation. It's really nice to meet you here. For me, it's the first interaction I have with you during this event, as I was not part of it yesterday or the day before. So I'm really happy to be able to be with you today and to have this conversation. So the topic, inclusion and diversity, and how we approach it in the national agency, maybe first of all I would like to say, as it was already mentioned, that this was not coming out of the blue. Inclusion and diversity in Erasmus Plus has a long history. A lot of things have already been done, so there was progress. It was just a continuation. It did not come out of nowhere. So indeed, with the new programming period or the new generation of Erasmus Plus, let's call it like that, there were these challenges. As you mentioned, and yes, we can see them as challenges, and I would say that the main novelty that came in 2021 for all national agencies was the fact that the European Commission was proposing a more structured approach, a rather more strategic approach. There were many things that had been done before, but now it was the moment, and it was a common European trend, let's say, for national agencies to approach inclusion and diversity in a more planned and structured and strategic way. That is, of course, challenging, but at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity in that, because at least for us in the Romanian National Agency, it was a moment when we just had to sit down and to look at what had already been done. Just a small bracket, let's say, because our national agency in Romania has all the Erasmus Plus fields integrated in the same institution. So when we are talking about inclusion and diversity, we are usually talking about all the fields. So 2021 was or actually 2020 even, was the moment when we had to stop and see what do we know. We started, I think, maybe not exactly in these words, but it was, what do we know so far? What has been going on? Okay, what do we still need to learn? What do we still need to do? So we had in 2020 and 2021 some sort of consultations with stakeholders, with our partner networks, internally in the national agency, and as well as a research study, and we collected data so that we know what to do. So basically, after going through this period of asking ourselves what had been done and what we need to do, we designed our strategic approach. And our strategic approach is based more or less, let's say, on 4 pillars. The first of them would be actually this one, research and consultations. We do believe that in order to tackle the topic of inclusion and diversity, we need to have data. We need to have some sort of data, not just perceptions. It's not really advisable to base your actions on what you perceive to be the reality or the truth. So we try to collect data, either scientifically or more structured via surveys or research, or via discussions or focus groups or smaller consultations, and this is what we plan to do constantly as an approach. So this would be one pillar. Then a second pillar of our strategy in inclusion and diversity is based on communication. And maybe that does come a bit of a surprise, because what we realized after the consultation period we had in our agency and with other stakeholders, we realized that it's a lot about how we communicate about it. It's a lot about how we share the inclusion and diversity stories. It's a lot about how we raise awareness of Erasmus Plus as an inclusive program rather than the elitist image that sometimes Erasmus has. So it's a lot about giving this, giving to the public and to the general public that we address a clear image of Erasmus connected to inclusion and diversity. That would be our second approach. Then it would be networking. Also something that we realized, and it was during the pandemic, so that probably also played a role. 2020, 2021, we realized that the actors involved in inclusion and diversity, and if we are to think specifically about higher education field, it would be the universities or other relevant stakeholders, just as ESN or other organizations. The actors need to meet and talk. The event you are hosting today and that you organize is a networking event among other objectives. So the relevant stakeholders need to talk, to share experiences and to learn together to act in an integrated way, because this is also how we thought we should act in an integrated way. We cannot act on one measure and ignore the others. So networking is the third one. And the last one, the last pillar of our strategic approach, let's say, is offering support, tailor-made support, and creating a community, because we do believe that it is important to have this kind of community related to the inclusion and diversity, and to offer support, either learning support or guidelines for universities and so on. And just one thing I would like to mention as well, I'm sorry for my voice, it's playing some tricks on me. It's going up and down, so I can't really control it. We as a national agency are not usually working directly with students. We are rather more or more frequently working with other relevant stakeholders, and probably most frequently with universities themselves and the Erasmus offices in the universities. So our main focus is acting on the pillars I mentioned, towards or in relation with universities or other organizations, and not directly with the students themselves. That is probably the best, or the, how should I put it? It's a relevant way of acting for us as an institution. At the same time, we do try to reach or to promote the individual stories, or to reach students in different events like the Erasmus Open Doors we are organizing, or to promote their stories in our communication channels and so on. So we do try to show the individual stories and how these stories can change the lives. But at the same time, our action is also very much directed towards universities and associations and other stakeholders involved in higher education and inclusion at the same time. So it's a long process. If it seems to you that if I talked about the pillars and the strategy and everything seems very clear, it is not. We have to be like a moment of truth and honesty here. It is, as it was already mentioned before, it is work in progress. It's about creating an inclusion mindset somehow. You can't really come up with a very quick, we are living in a very quick, in very quick times, let's say. We are very used to, I don't know, click an object and the solution appears. For me at least, it doesn't seem to be like that when we are talking about inclusion and diversity. It's rather a long process. It's a long-term engagement, let's say, not just a process, it's an engagement. We have to act on it. We are still piloting our measures. Not always in the best of the rhythm possibles, or with the best approach probably, but we are learning, so I think that is also one thing to be mentioned. Yes, this is at least how we are approaching it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we are passing, we mentioned the stories of the students, and now we are passing through a very powerful story. Speaking about your experience, Anastasia, you went on two Erasmus experiences, one in Budapest and another in Seville. You would like to tell us a bit about your experience, what went good, what went bad, tell us everything.
So yes, so as you mentioned, I went on to Erasmus. The two stories are very different, because my first Erasmus I was using a lot the taxi. Um, or another example here in Romania, for example, to get here with a taxi, you're not allowed to get in the university. You need to, the taxi dropped us outside the gate. Again, this for you it might not be a problem because you can walk for 5 minutes, but for me it's a bit stressful, but yeah. In general, I manage it all and I'm not afraid of doing what I want and going where I want. Next year, I hope I can go again for Erasmus. Probably my last year. Yes. That's it. That's a general thing about my experiences. I don't know if you want me to tell more. I said about the problems, the good things. I do whatever you do. I party. I like partying.
Anastasia, my friend.
Yeah, fun. I made fun in 2019 and he knows. He sees me a lot in the events, so he knows. I went to Ibiza too. So, yes, I live my life. I like my life, so.
Thank you, because I think your story is super important and it proves that you are also impacting other lives, people with also your story, and you are like showing to other ESN people that you actually are also contributing with your stories.
Gracias.
Of course, you can take the microphone. Thank you.
And also, ESNers helped me a lot, not only during the event but also in Cyprus. Organizing events as it is disabled is a bit difficult. I cannot carry things, but thank God they are there for me, and they keep me up. And they help me.
Thank you. Okay, so we reach our final speaker, and Andrea, as you know, I'm a huge fan of local level. I think, please don't, the other levels don't get set, but for me, it's the most important level of ESN. It's what sustains our network. And I heard that ESN Timișoara is doing a lot of events and a lot of activities to support inclusive mobility. And I wanted to know what actually you are doing in your section, what you are doing to support inclusive mobility, people with your opportunities. So if you want to share a bit with us.
Sure. Yes, in ESN Timișoara, we are doing a lot of activities because also we had among us volunteers with fewer opportunities, also maybe disabilities and we try to have events inclusive, also for them to give the opportunity to join us the party, to join us the trip, and I think we did a really good job because one of our volunteers went, I think, in 3 or 4 Erasmus, also Erasmus Mundus. She's in a wheelchair and she's doing a lot of things, and it's really a role model for us. And we were really happy to have her in our team. And because of her, we really learned how to manage all the situation with all the Erasmus that were part of our family in Timișoara. Also last year we had an Erasmus student, and I think her story was impressive for us. She came with a friend, also she was in a wheelchair, so she needed support area. But we already had inclusive events, so she could reach our party, she could reach our events. Also, we are really grateful for the support from our universities. They let us use their space for free, and our university has really a lot of facilities for people with fewer possibilities. So it's really a great collaboration. So it makes us feeling that all of our events are inclusive for all the people. Also, we take her to a national trip. It's given to Vamaverche, so from Timișoara to Constanța, it's a really long way. So most of the people are going by plane or by train, but we had to find a solution how to take our Erasmus to enjoy it as a trip. So we rent a bus, and few Erasmus and volunteers went with her. In the beginning, she was afraid to come, like she didn't want to bother anyone, but we said, come with us, it will be okay, everyone can at least 1 minute from their time to spend with you. And she came with us, she had fun, more with your students, because if you get close to them, you'll find a lot of things. You can find daily problems which not all of us see, because they are coming from different backgrounds, different countries, countries with less possibilities. We have also a lot of international students who are coming with other programs, not just with Erasmus, for countries from Asia or Africa or South America and Central America. And for them it's really different here in Europe. And it's really great for them to have someone to rely on, as we are in ESN. Yeah, if you want to find more, you can approach me, because we really have a lot of stories to share. And I hope you can do the same things as we do for our section, because every student can go in a mobility. Myself, I didn't have the opportunity to go in a mobility, because when I was in bachelor degree, I wanted to go, and I wanted to go in Poland. I had some problems with the paper. The teacher didn't want to encourage me, and they suggested to go in a country like Germany. But for me as a student, I didn't afford to go in Germany to study. So I think this was also something to improve, and I'm happy that to see today they are doing more things to give us, to the students, opportunities to go in a mobility. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andre. And now, as a last question for all the speakers, we are opening the floor to questions after, but this question is more now about how ESN and can support you, and this question goes respectively for Slava and to Miruna. And we wanted to know, how do you think ESN can better support your work, respectively for the national agencies and the European Commission?
Okay. Like I've been saying throughout this conference now and some of the sessions I've been in, I think there is a lot of room for ESN to be more involved. And I think this it would be a good idea. I know that you already have a good relationship with your higher education institutions, but if you haven't, then I encourage you to make friends at the international office, or also other offices in the university. Because something that we mentioned in our program guide, like when we have all our rules and the monitoring guide, is that there is a need within universities to have these what we call inclusion officers there, and they're not just supposed to be promoting inclusive mobility, but they're supposed to be communicating within the university. Because we know that sometimes in international offices they work in their own box, the student registration office they work in their own box, and the counseling office in their own box. So we need to have someone to come between them and promote the opportunities that are available through Erasmus. And I think students can have a role there as well, to be one of the people who are being involved. So that would be my recommendation to you. And just really use the power that you have from being, you're on the ground, you can hear all the good stories and the bad stories. And I think, I used to work in a university, and whenever I was trying to convince people to go on mobility, people weren't really listening to me. They wanted to hear from the students themselves who have been abroad. So I think it's really important to have good role models to promote mobility.
I think my answer is going to be more or less the same, because for us as a national agency, it is important to connect with you as ESN, because you are closer to the students than we are, so you can talk to them, you can get information, you can understand them, you can advocate for different situations regarding inclusion and diversity. You can get information and have a more clear picture of what solutions we could find together, and this type of information would be also useful for us as a national agency to have. And again, at the communication level, you are the living stories of Erasmus. I'm a living story myself, only I happened to be an Erasmus 20 years ago, so I think the students would more want to listen to you. So you can inspire, you can get stories yourselves, and as I was mentioning, for us at least as a national agency, it seems so important to have like public awareness of the stories and how Erasmus can transform each other and how students with fewer opportunities can benefit from it. It's not they are not limited to participate. So that would be another option. For us, it's important also, as I was saying, to become to create a networking relationship, to cooperate. In the end, I think we have to ask ourselves, what is the objective? What do we want? What are we, I don't know, let's say, fighting for? So if we have a common objective or common objectives from time to time, I think we can sit together and work together and listen to each other, because I think it is really important to do that. And to offer support as well. I think it very much for you as ESN, as you are very close to students and you can create this kind of events and you can create support and deliver information to students, that is really, really important. And for us would also mean that becoming aware together of us and working together for that we would reach together our objective. And there's one more thing that maybe I would like to say is if you are not, all of you may be very well familiar with what inclusion and diversity is, because Erasmus Plus suggests quite a broad understanding of inclusion and diversity. There are 8 barriers that we should remove from the participation. There are 8 types of barriers, so there are so many different types of situations. So if yourselves, you are not already very much familiar with what inclusion and diversity is or how to tackle certain situations, I think it's a good learning opportunity for you as ESN, just as it is for us in the national agencies. When we say in our vision is that we transform through learning, so we also have to learn. I think it's obvious that we all have to learn, and we do not master the topic of inclusion and diversity, so I think it's also a responsibility. You are close to the students, you are also responsible and accountable for what you create for them, and it's worth it. It's really nice. As Andrea was saying, you can really have people feel like they belong and that they can do anything. So I think that is really nice to get that feeling.
Thank you. And now on the other side of the story, Anastasia, taking advantage that you're also part of this beautiful network, would you like to share your experience also being a volunteer in ESN?
Okay. I am part of ESN since 2020. I've been to many positions. I've been to some international events, and I have to say that being an ESNer, it's the best thing I did in my life. It's my best decision I took. In general, whenever I have anything, I need any help, even in the international events or in our section, I get the help I want. For example, I went to the NBT last summer alone in Burgas. The OCD, I don't know if you have any listeners from Eastern Bulgaria, but the listeners there were very helpful, and I thank them for that. I was first, when I got in ESN, I was the vice national representative, then the communication manager, and now the president. So it's a blessing, and for real ESN can help a lot, and I hope that in the future more people like me or people that you cannot see that they are disabled will have the chance and willing to get in this network, because they can offer a lot, and the memories that you make are amazing. Even though you have difficulties, you can get through them.
Thank you. And finally, Andrea, in your experience as also as a volunteer, where do you think can be improved?
Thank you. So I was a volunteer in Timisoara 5 years.
local representative of the city. We have a youth center, and they always included us in the structured dialogue where they can find our problems, what problems have the students in the local level in the city, so they can improve and do more things for the city to be inclusive for all the people, even they are staying there just 3 or 6 months, so everyone should feel at home in the city where they are going. So maybe this we can improve for every local section to be more aware of the things that we are going around and raise the voice. If you have the opportunity, tell us the problem of the international students that they are facing in the city. I think it's also an important topic for us. It can be improved.
Thank you so much to all the speakers. We are now opening the floor to questions. So I open, as you say, yes, send the speakers list.
Thank you. Hi, and thank you for this lovely discussion. My question is for the national agency. So my question for you is, what do you think is the biggest obstacle for national agencies into achieving this realistically ideal inclusivity for people with fewer opportunities?
The biggest obstacle you can mention. I can't define a big obstacle alone. I actually believe in the intersection between situations and realities and actions, because if there was only one thing that would play a major role, maybe we could identify that and work exclusively on that. But as I was saying before, when you have so many types of barriers in front of young people, let's say in Erasmus Plus, you can't really put your finger on one thing alone, because for example, if you belong to a certain ethnic minority and you have also an economical background that does not allow you to travel alone or to study abroad, or there are many other things. In Romania, I know that the major thing, let's say, would be the economic obstacles, because generally, as Andrea was mentioning before, she's one of the students that at some point in her life could not afford, even with the Erasmus grant, to go and study abroad. So if we were to look at our numbers, I would say that probably these are the biggest economical barriers, because they do play a major role sometimes, and I know that the regulations of Erasmus have changed, and there is progress in that way in order to remove this barrier. One other thing would also be that sometimes it's really hard to reach the target group you want, or it's really hard to involve them, or to listen to them, or to make them aware that they could also become part of Erasmus. It's a long-term process, as I said, it's a long-term engagement in order to tackle these kind of situations. So all in all, pointing and directing your efforts in these kind of ways, and at the same time trying to show when such examples exist, maybe that would be the key, and also working together with other stakeholders. Maybe that would be one of the way to act.
What? Yes. Sorry, I cannot stand up. Everything will fall.
I'm Randa from ESM Finland, and I have two questions. I will try to be quick. First question is to the national agency. You mentioned that one of the pillars is research, and I wanted to ask if you actually do some qualitative research on public awareness about diversity and inclusion topics, and it's kind of related to my second question, and I will start with a small story. I used to be a section president last year, and I had a vice president and a secretary in one phase, and we visited EGM in Porto together. and she was always my right hand, and she was leading my way in the city because I'm really bad in orientation. I can get lost in 3 trees. And she was helping me so many times, and she was just a great volunteer, super responsible person. At the end of my mandate, I realized, I was told by another person that she has a severe visual disability. I am so embarrassed to admit that working with this person for the whole year, I could not see any sign that she needed some extra help from me, although I was in the environment promoting diversity, inclusion, and trying to include people with disabilities to our community as well. So my question is actually to everybody: what are the concrete, specific steps or events or projects we can do in order to raise public awareness among our volunteers, to recognize people who need additional help from us, to understand what disability is, what disadvantage is, and what fewer opportunities are? Maybe you have some really specific examples, and maybe someone from the audience can share their experience as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Regarding your question on research and on qualitative indicators, we are very much aware that this is always a hard thing. We are also asking ourselves and trying to avoid the thing that inclusion is not a number. And when looking back in 2020 and 2021, when we were looking at the numbers, it seemed that it's pretty much okay, or at least in some of the fields in Erasmus+. For higher education, maybe sometimes it's easier to count the number of students with fewer opportunities that were in mobility, and we can say that we are at about 10%, and a very small percent of them have special needs, like under 1%. My colleague from higher education is right behind me, so I have a very clear feedback now. Yes, so we can count that. But when we were talking also about the other fields of Erasmus+, like youth or school education, adult education, if we only look at the numbers, it might get you tricked, let's say. Because the numbers sometimes tell a better story than maybe you feel it's the case. And I think that is a process to be discussed or also tackled together with all the organisms or institutions involved, together with the European Commission, how to bring the qualitative aspects when we look at things, because we know there are a lot of IT instruments when we are talking about giving data about our projects or mobilities. There are a lot of boxes you can tick and create an image on that, and that is important. Statistically, we need this kind of information. We can't have focus groups with millions of people. But what we did, I remember when we had our first strategy, and we called it like that, strategy, like an official document called strategy, was in 2016. So it went from 2016 to 2020, and we had this final study, research study in 2020 to analyze what we had done, to evaluate. And in order to bring the qualitative aspect, we had these focus groups, direct interviews with former beneficiaries or other stakeholders involved, in order also to get some other types of indicators and to get some other type of stories other than those that the numbers might say. So we are very much aware of that. That's why maybe we are proposing or approaching this in, we hope, in a more integrated way that combines also networking, also listening to each other, listening to the stakeholders involved. Like for us as a national agency, I know we are talking also internally inside the institution with our colleagues from higher education as well, that we also need to listen to the universities to understand specific context. We also need to listen to student organizations and understand specific context. It's a process. It's not something that will be solved just like that, I'm afraid. Yes, we try maybe to raise public awareness by creating this kind of, or being part of this kind of meetings, by trying to make them as public as possible, by enlarging the Erasmus community that is aware of how things work, and by working together. Probably that would also be one way of doing it. Thank you.
Welcome. It's a person behind you, and after him, we are the five person.
On the second question.
I can start maybe for the concrete measures. I don't have any amazing ideas for you that I'm hiding up my sleeve or anything, but I think it's in terms of what you could do if you aren't already, is getting together with local or national organizations of people with fewer opportunities. I mean, if you need more information on what in the Erasmus program is considered fewer opportunities, I think the national agency would be helpful there to talk to the national or the local ESN section about what are these 8 barriers that you mentioned, and what are the focus, what is the criteria in your specific countries. But I also, maybe I'm not the right person to promote it, but there is this website called inclusivemobility.eu. Some of you know it, but I think it has some very good features. It has all these information packages and like what do you call it, like tailor-made tasks or information for different groups. So maybe someone from ESN would like to talk more about it.
Thank you.
Also maybe the best way to raise awareness to your section, as we said, is to get the volunteers get into the shoes of these people, maybe organize a workshop for, I don't know, for example, during the social inclusion days, even for the Erasmus students, you can have an event, blind dating, for example, and get the Erasmus students or even the listeners do things while they are blind. So getting the people that are not disabled into the shoes of the people that are disabled will be the only way, I think, to help this awareness.
Thank you.
At local level, we are already doing, at least in Timișoara, some activities for awareness, like blind picnic, blind dinner, where people can see the other side. And then if you experience this, then can you be aware which are the side of a people, of someone with a disability. Maybe someone doesn't want to say to you that he has a problem, but you can see because you experience. We can create trainings, workshops. Also, as mentioned before, we have, at least in Romania, some organizations specific for people with disability, like NSA for Romania, which is for the people with hearing disability. So we do, if we did in the past, we asked them to teach us the sign language, and we had a campaign on Instagram with our volunteers showing how to say different words in Romanian in the sign language. So there are a lot of solutions. As I like to say at my work, every problem has a solution. So you just need to find it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Juan. Nice to meet you all. Well, my question comes with a story. You actually triggered me to tell this story right now. So I have fewer opportunities, and maybe you don't see that because I'm white and I'm a man. But also we have fewer opportunities. I'm from Colombia, so I struggle a lot with money. And I have the fainting disease, so I faint out of nowhere without a clue. I never tell this until it happens, because I'm ashamed of fainting. I don't want to be an inconvenience for people. And I'm scared to tell people I faint, so be careful if I faint out of the nowhere. And I always tell after, because I also am scared of having to educate people on how to act on my disease, on my disability. So my question comes to which platforms could we start for us people who don't want to shine but are disabled to train others, because I feel the pressure of having to educate others about what's happening to me. And sometimes I prefer to hide it than to tell others to be aware. And until I have an inconvenience about money or about my sickness, I don't tell anything, because I really don't want to share sometimes my stories. I prefer to stay anonymous to them, trying to take a little bit of bravery, but I hate to say this. I hate to say I faint. So, which platforms are we enable for people who don't want to say, I have a sickness?
You are the right person to know.
Difficult question, to be honest, because for me, I don't know, for me it's not something that you should be ashamed or that you should hide. So I don't have an answer to this. I would suggest that you ask for help. I mean, I ask help every day, 24/7, even if sometimes I don't want to ask for help and look that I'm strong and independent. But it's nothing to be ashamed of and to be afraid of. So I don't want to suggest you any anonymous place to say about your disability or your. Sometimes it cannot. Sometimes our disabilities are not disabilities, are specialties. So you're special, and you should embrace this.
May I add, this is a very personal reflection, so please take it just like that. I really, really hope, on a very human level, that we don't lose faith in the human connection, and we are not afraid of telling the others what struggles we might have, what things we might not be very comfortable with. I think that being vulnerable is actually what creates connection between people, and connection between people is really valuable. I think we are talking here about learning and about transforming and about changing lives. I think being vulnerable and admitting that, maybe I'm not in the position to advise you with anything, but maybe you would be surprised just how welcoming people might become. So maybe you can try.
Thank you so much for your bravery.
Okay, I'm Simone, I come from Italy, and I would like to ask you a question about: are there any example of at national level of agency, stakeholders, and university working together on this topic? And like here we are speaking about it is an international event. We don't have all the national agencies, we don't have a representative from university, but I think it could be a great idea, and it should be important to have this kind of moment and confrontation, because as we were saying, I think one of the main problems is that the others, they don't realize which are the main difficulties of doing an Erasmus. For example, when I have learning disability, and before applying, I need to ask to university which were the kind of measures implemented by each university. Then I went to Erasmus in France. I need a medical certification in Italy to send to a doctor in France. I have an interview with a doctor in French. So hopefully I know French, but think about people who don't speak French is a big barrier. Then I have to pass it to the university, which have to approve it, and hopefully at the end of this process I can have additional measure to face which my difficulties. So what I think is important is to have this kind of moment to make understand which are the main problem, the main difficulties that we actually face, so that everyone can better understand. As you were saying, we need to change minds, and national agencies, universities, and ESN can do it by creating this kind of moment. So I don't know if there are any examples.
initiative that's going on in the EU now. And I know that many of these alliances, where they get together, at least like 6 to 9 universities usually, they come together to create this one campus, this one community of universities. And I know many of them have specific focus, and they have their working groups on inclusion and diversity and mobility. And I know some of them are also, they're creating platforms, so it's easy for students who are in these universities and who want to move between those universities to see, okay, I have this specific barrier, and which university would be best for me then? Like, I have these learning disability or learning issues or whatever, and then what are the options in all the universities? What is available for me there? And what is the accessibility on all the universities? So I think maybe we can start small with these individual alliances, but then using something like the Inclusive Mobility website, where you of course you put in the information. I think this is super important and a real opportunity also for listeners to encourage their institutions, if they haven't put their information on accessibility and what is available in this Inclusive Mobility website, if they haven't done it yet, really encourage them to do it, because I mean, you have nothing to lose here. You're just helping more people.
I'm not sure I will be able to give you a very concrete answer. I can tell you how we are working with universities in the national agency. So we are in constant contact with all the Erasmus offices, and we have frequently meetings with them. And I know from the inclusion perspective that my colleagues from the higher education, I think it was last year, that they had sort of a survey, but a little bit, again, to understand where we are and to get some data and to get some feedback from them on the topic of inclusion and diversity. That was one step. And again, it is my colleagues who are preparing sort of guidelines on the topic of inclusion and diversity to better, let's say, support universities on this topic specifically. And I'm quite positive that the guidelines will not be enough in themselves, because usually it happens that there are a lot of resources created that are very useful, but sometimes, as we were saying, networking is important and peer learning is important. So probably after these kind of guidelines, we will need to define specific topics or tackle the topic of inclusion and diversity as a whole, and give some other type of support or training to universities, and to learn ourselves, as, of course, on specific topics, so as to raise awareness, again, that inclusion and diversity is very broad. Sometimes you don't see it, sometimes the barriers are there, but you are not aware of them. There are many types, so you have to become very much aware and open. And I truly, truly believe, as I was saying earlier, that sometimes it's just about asking a question, because people will try. You were mentioning, Andrea, one example of the student that said that she didn't want to, I don't know, put some pressure on you. I wrote it down actually. I have the words. Yes, I have it. She didn't want to bother anyone, and she felt very lucky that she didn't feel like she had any disability. Sometimes it just starts with the attitude. It's just asking a question, admitting that you don't know when you don't know, and admitting and trying to learn. I think it's also part of learning and solutions.
Thank you.
Wait.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay, so I come from Bosnia and Herzegovina. My surname is Bisep, and I'm volunteer. It's at Sarajevo. And I actually have a question regarding, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Cool. I actually have a question regarding inclusion when it comes to people who actually have no disabilities but come from different races and religions. This is primarily connected to, for example, Muslim students from Europe or from Asia coming, or from Africa coming to study for Erasmus exchange somewhere in Europe, where Islam is not obviously a dominant religion. I wanted to ask you, how do you cope with those kind of students, and what should we do when it comes to inclusion to the society where they came? to that particular university or that particular group of people? Thank you.
Hello. Yes. For example, in our section, in Timișoara there are a lot of people from every corner of the world. We have also from Muslims, and yes, we cannot see which one is Muslim, which one is Orthodox, which one has another religion. But I think we as ESN, we are really open-minded, and we not treat everyone the same. So if we as volunteers, we don't have a problem with this, we can give an example also to Erasmus students. Like I'm sure for every one of us, we have in our local section also volunteers with different background, different ethnicities. In the Central we really have different ethnicity. From every continent, we have at least one volunteer. So we have to find a way to include everyone, and the best way is treat everyone the same. It doesn't matter what color of the skin is, what religion they have, and if we start with these small things, others will take our example, and everything will be okay. Just someone needs to start this leading behavior towards the others. So I think we can be the change makers for this society.
Thank you.
I have some suggestions that we do in our section. First of all, yes, you have to acknowledge that you will have people that have different religion and different background. So the thing that we do is that we translate everything in English. So even in our meetings, as ESN section, we speak a lot of English because we have volunteers that don't speak Greek. In our events, in our posts, everything is in English. Also, when we do an event, we have a form, and we ask the students to let us know if they have any allergy or if they cannot eat something. So if they are Muslims, we will know that they will not be able to eat pork, and they will write, "I don't eat pork," for example. So yes, having in mind that you might have this kind of people and think of ways that you can include them, it's my advice.
Okay. So I actually have now two things to say. One is just a comment or like a story. I'm from Enzosh, I'm from Eastern Poland, and I live in Warsaw. And in Warsaw we have this very nice sort of initiative. We call it museum because museum or like exhibition. This is basically exhibition called blind. No, I'm sorry, invisible exhibition, where all people working there are either blind or have some problems with their eyesight. And they firstly, you can sign up for this. So there's a group. There's a talk when they tell you about their community, how their lives look like, and then if you have any questions, you can talk with them. And then there is this tour around a few completely dark buildings, not buildings, I'm so sorry, rooms, which act like specific places. For example, there is a room that is like a street. There is a room that is like a shop. There is a room that is like a museum. And when you go for these rooms, your guide is always with you and kind of explains to you, and you can sort of relate a little bit of what troubles this community usually encounters. So this is a nice way, I think, like to look for some representations of those different communities in your place, in your city, and then you can like learn from them, and you can
can organize some maybe events with them. That's one thing. And actually, the second one is a question, and it's for everyone because I'm just a little bit confused. I'm again, I come from Poland. Poland is a very, firstly, very white country, and secondly, a very mostly Catholic. Everyone is not everyone, but most people are Catholic. They've been raised Catholic, and they are very often not used to and just very confused about other religions. And as I'm from ESN in Warsaw, University of Warsaw, we have, of course, a lot of foreign students from different parts of the world, different ethnicities, religions, and so on. Do you think it would be okay to organize something connected with their cultures? For example, now I know there is Ramadan, and Poland is not a Muslim country, but would it be fine if, for example, ESN in Warsaw to organize an iftar and the meal for the end of the day? Do you think that would be okay, or maybe not? It would be culture appropriation. Just yeah.
Which country?
I'm from Poland, Warsaw.
In my opinion, it would be totally okay because people that have less opportunities, that have different backgrounds, they don't want other people to ignore them. They don't want other people to act like they don't have this different background. So yeah, I think they will like this. And I mean, imagine that in social inclusion day, social impact days, we do similar things. I mean, it's like having an event for sign language. Isn't it the same? Having an event for people that are doing the Ramadan. I mean, it's not different. It's the same. So yeah, why not?
What we do in SMSR, maybe you can also do. We have a project which is really important for us. It's present your country. So every semester we give the opportunity for our Erasmus to present their culture, their things. So they have almost 1 week where they can show something special about them, what should know about the country, about their religion, about their custom. So I think in my opinion, if we do events for Christmas in our countries, we can do also other type of events. It's just not a big problem, and for sure the Erasmus students will be really curious to find some tradition from other Erasmus students. I think the only thing that you need to do is just to talk with the people.
Hello, it's working? Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Sofia. I'm from ESM Mino, a local Portuguese section. You might have heard of it because the General Assembly is in 2 weeks. Sorry for the self-promotion. I want to first of all say thank you a lot for mentioning the website inclusivemobility.eu. It's something that I've been trying to push forward in my university for quite some time. I just checked the website again for my university's page, still pretty barren, so I have to keep the good work going. And I wanted to ask if you could share a bit regarding the top-up grants. I know you mentioned grants specifically in terms of transportation and so on, but if you have some suggestions on websites to visit or just overall how we can better advise our students on these grants to make their mobility maybe cheaper in terms of inclusion and diversity, I would appreciate it.
Yes, I can explain the grants a little bit. So when it comes to students with fewer opportunities, we have 2 different ways of supporting these students. We have now, with the new program, what we are calling the top-up for students with fewer opportunities, and it's a top-up on top of your normal grant. And the group who receives this funding, it's determined by the national agencies and the national authorities in this country. And this information should be available on the website of the university, and I would assume on the website of the national agency as well. Because if no one knows about it, then of course no one is going to apply for it. We don't want a complicated application system for this. If the criteria is that you background, then maybe you have some document that states that could serve as the supporting document. If you have a child, you might be able to show, I don't know, a birth certificate or some registration that you have a child. And so this really, everything depends on the national context. So it's difficult to say this is your group, this is what document you need to hand in, because it depends on the institution or the countries involved. But the information should be available. This is also what we are looking for in this monitoring of the charter, that the university actually promotes which groups are eligible for the top-up. So it's very important that everyone knows what it is so that they can apply. And the other kind of support that we have is this, what we are calling just inclusion support, and it's based on real cost. And the main focus group here is students with disabilities or health issues, because then you can get, it's 100% of the like the cost. It's based on real cost. So if you need to buy an extra chair for an accompanying person on the plane, if you need to take taxis, you can get you get the funding there 100%. So it depends. Sometimes institutions or countries will have students with disability as the recipient of the top-up. Sometimes they do not. But then these people can, if they don't get the top-up, they can at least apply for this inclusion support, where you have to provide a little bit more explanation on why you need this exact funding.
Katarzyna, ESN Slovenia. So my question will be more connected to mental health and mental health awareness. I'm gonna start with a story. So recently we had to face some people leaving our section because of mental health problems, because they found actually that ESN is kinda, let's say, toxic place for them at that moment. So I'm just curious, because it kind of opens also the question regarding Erasmus people and their problems they are facing, and we don't know about them mostly, and so on. We are actually happy in our city because we have good connection also with organization of students of psychology, and they are helping us. They are providing actually support in English for Erasmus students if they need the help. So we are making one event, and they are getting the contact if they really need that they can actually contact them. But I'm just curious if there is such thing also offered to other sections, like through ESN International. I know there was a lot of events going on, but I'm just curious if there is also some support opportunities for these people, for Erasmus people, and during their mobility.
Just to officially say that I'm personally not aware of that, but that would be really welcoming, I would say. You are talking about this kind of psychological support for Erasmus students specifically. I think it would be a nice service for all students in general. I'm personally a psychology student myself right now, so I truly believe in this. This would be quite needed, and I think it would be quite valuable to have at, I don't know, university level, or I don't know, maybe also in ESN somehow created a professional type of support, but I'm personally not aware of something like that.
Also, ESN can help for this, especially for the Erasmus students I'm talking, or even for the ESNers. For example, us, even though it's still not working, we're trying to organize it. We created a safety team, and these people can be responsible to be aware of the
maybe that could be a nice project under Erasmus Plus. You are here, many ESN organizations. You have people from the national agencies. Maybe that would be a project. So don't lose the idea.
Thank you. Are experiencing technical difficulties?
Maybe not.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, I'm Anna from Eastern Spain, and as the session goes on, I think we are seeing different kind of approaches of how disability or disadvantage should be treated in local sections, and I think it's about. I think we are coming to a point where balance is the meeting point of all of them, because sorry, I'm nervous and I forgot the name of Anastasia. That people from different backgrounds, they don't want other people to act as if they don't have different backgrounds. But as the girl with the pink jacket that was here sitting said, she wanted to know how to recognize people from different backgrounds and people who have different needs. And she found other people, that people were finding difficulties also to tell, because as Juan said as well, sometimes it's difficult to expose yourself, your needs, or to educate people. So maybe if, how would you feel if a person would be in charge of, like, as the safety team, one person was in charge of being that safety person? I don't know, if from the start of your mobility, you know that someone was specially trained to, I don't know, to be the educator maybe for other people in the section, or that was more connected to the agencies or the agencies in the town, that local agencies that are more used to treat with these kind of situations. I don't know how you would feel about having that person in your local section when you are doing your mobility. Thank you.
So as I understood, you mean having a person that will have a position that will be the responsible one to raise awareness and help those people, right? Actually, it's a nice idea. Yes, why not? I mean, okay, we have the social impact coordinators. I don't know if you have it in your sections. But okay, these people are responsible to organize social impact events. But it would be nice in my area to have such a person, because yes, okay, I said that people with disabilities do not want us to treat them that they are different. But I can understand that for some people will not be very easy to express themselves and to accept any difference that they have. So yes, I think this would be a great solution for people that are facing more problems in finding solutions and accepting what they have. So yes, I support it. If this was the question, if I say yes or no.
Thank you. I think we have time for one or two more questions.
Less emotional than last time. In our session, we have the inclusivity speech. We try to do it before every event, especially about behaviors with people that drink a lot of alcohol. We this is not so nice. It's good that we do it, but I don't like how we are doing it right now, but it's the best way that we have fun. We can, or we have banned even people for certain hate speech that also is against the inclusivity about religion, about gender, and how they annoy other people. We have encountered the people who drunk try to harass women, and in the inclusivity spectrum, women have been minimized in our society. I talking about all the world, women have been minimized. I'm so happy to see that this panel is only women. Like that's so much strength. I feel bad for being a man, the one who is saying go woman, but okay. We have this opportunity, and we try sometimes to collaborate with other diversity groups. We found out that if we try to do all the inclusivity ourselves, we are not going anywhere because there are other groups. Our problem is many of these inclusivity groups, they have their own limitations. Sometimes it's the language. So how to include diverse people that are exchange students who only speak English with the diverse people local is one of the main challenges that we have encountered, because most of the time these people who are diverse or have disabilities are not every time involved in the language. So it's very difficult for us to reach that moment. We try to get interpreters, like people who speak both languages, in a strategy to include others. My question is, how could we support this more, and how, as ESNers, and this is another factor of inclusion, how we are involving not young ESNers, people who are maybe a little bit older and don't feel part of the party, but want to feel part of the culture, or yes, part of the inclusion of the city trips or things like that. My question goes, how can include other generations, maybe older generations, or maybe even kids' generations, who could become the change, and where we have to work more to avoid raising again barriers that could exclude people. I don't know if my question is also clear, but it's more of how we include other generations as our generation. Yes, no, someone?
Actually, we had this problem in our local section. We had some Erasmus older, and of course the youngest. I think at one moment the youngest was around 18 in that year, and the oldest, I don't remember, they were more than 35. What solution we found was mostly to organize diverse events, also for the younger generation, also for the older generation. Both of them came to the event, so you have to create like a space for everyone to try a little bit of everything. It's a really complicated topic, like sometimes it's really hard to make happy everyone. You have just to try to see what is work better for your generation of Erasmus students, because every semester they are changing, every semester new challenges. So it's, don't be afraid to try it, because if you don't try it, you'll never know. Also, sometimes the old generation maybe feels more younger than the younger ones. So yeah, it's about you to try and find the best solution that fits into your local section.
Yes, I would suggest to be more diverse, and think that, for example, in our section, we do not organize, for example, only parties, because we know that we might have bigger Erasmus students or students that don't like parties, so we do other events. So we are open to everything, and we have diversity of events. So yes, okay, not everyone will be able to come to the events, to every event, but at least they will be happy and appreciate that we are trying to include everyone and to make everyone happy.
Thank you so much.
One thing I just wanted to add, if I understood your question, one perspective maybe. personally celebrating something unless I have, I don't know, dived a bit more into the topic. I can do that, but I would rather a little bit reflect on something first and then celebrate what I find the celebration of. So maybe also for different generations, creating and holding spaces where people can reflect or talk about something like that. And if I understood correctly, you were also mentioning the language aspect, if people do speak or don't speak the native or local language or English. This is a very maybe superficial kind of answer I would give, but have you ever seen children speaking different languages and being and playing together? I think we should learn from them because somehow, without speaking the other's language, they do find a way of getting along and understanding each other, and sometimes the verbal language is just one element of the communication and not the whole communication. So I'm pretty positive there are many types of exercises and contexts you can create.
Well, any last contribution?
Not really, but I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your stories. I think it's been really inspirational to hear from you, your personal stories and the stories from your section. So I just want to say thank you.
Okay, thank you so much all. I'm seeing already people leaving the room